Well, I'm delighted to be joined here today by Manny and Jenny, who are two of this year's Oxygen influencers. Welcome, Manny and Jenny.
Hiya. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for coming in today. So you both work with industry associations or non-profits that, in their own different ways, are on a mission to make the IT channel more attractive and more equitable industry to work in. So why don't we start with that, Manny? If I come to you first, T-Care. So how did you get involved in T-Care, and what motivated you to be part of that journey?
So T-Care, we started working with around 2 years ago. We're a founding member. It came about, we were on a inclusion journey within Exertis, and we were set up employee resource groups. And at that time, I became the chair for the ethnicity ERG. And we were just trying to find out what other businesses were doing, where they were on the journey, what's working, what's not working, and how we could do more. And we came across T-Care, I think, from Nush at Softcat, introduced to T-Care. What they do is for racial equality. And that sat very well with the ethnicity ERG to understand more about it. We then looked into how do we become more involved, and it showed that actually it wasn't just a case of just signing up, being a founding member. Is one, it's an investment, but actually it's also an investment of your leadership team as well. So there's a commitment to join a certain amount of events throughout the year at CEO level, but there's also a lot of volunteering work that happens in the background as well. So now I'm part of the leadership team for T-Care, but we have many people, other people in the organisation involved across the board within T-Care, and it's been really fulfilling. We had our first tech summit last September. You remember, Doug, it was a Friday, raining. And we had around 200 people turn up to the event. And I think that just shows what the investment is within the channel and the tech community within making it a more inclusive workplace to work for. And 200 people at an event is a big feat because it's very hard to get people to events on any day. So that's why we knew we were definitely doing things the right way.
No, it was a great event, and I do remember it very well. I think it was windy as well as wet.
Yes.
So double whammy there. And Jenny, you're involved with the channel community, of course, which is a free mentoring network. So can you just talk about what need that is filling in the industry?
Of course. So when you start out in the channel, or maybe when you've been in the channel a little while, and I think you become very used to the organization that you are in, and it may be that you are starting to feel like you aren't sure where your next step is in your career path, or maybe it's that you just want to pick the brains of someone else, or that you are at a certain point in your career where you really require the support and knowledge of someone else. So as a channel buddy, we essentially act as mentors. So mentees can join up. They can be any age, any background, any role, any organization, as long as it's within the channel, junior role, senior role, exec role. It could be anyone, but really just someone looking for a little bit of support, a little bit of advice, and just a little bit of direction as to where they're going. And it's been great. I've helped people through interview processes. I've helped people see their careers in a new perspective, and actually led them down a path that they might not necessarily have seen for themselves, but because I just have that slightly different perspective, and I've seen maybe it happening in other organizations, it just gave them a different viewpoint. I've also helped people that have just started in the IT channel and how to navigate all the acronyms in vendor world, which is a lot. So it's been really fulfilling. I've picked up such a great bond and keep in touch with all the people that up to this point I have mentored. And it's just been really great to see people, improve themselves for the better.
No, definitely. I think there were probably two reasons why the two of you were put forward for Oxygen influencers, if I may. The first was what we just talked about, the non-profits that you're involved with. I think the second was that you're both young leaders that have been promoted very quickly in quick succession through the organisation or organisations that you've been involved with. So, I mean, it'd be really good to get your perspective on leadership and whether the qualities that are needed in leadership today are maybe different from 10 years ago. Manny, maybe if I come to you first on that one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed and the needs have, because organizations are becoming more diverse, and you're finding actually it's not just the normal, but it's the age group that's coming through. Their needs are very different. The way they work is really different. And also you've got AI making a massive play into the world that we work in today, that we're all part of. And it's about looking at how do you become more of an ethical leader. So we're looking at obviously corporate social responsibility, but there's going to be a huge responsibility from an AI. How do you keep it safe within your organizations and ethically correct? So they've got so much more responsibility than they did 10 years ago. I think it would have been numbers, than people. But I think now you look at it, numbers, of course, play a huge part, but you've got the massive of your people, the culture of your organization is becoming more important to the people that work there. And AI is going to transform the way that we work today. And you need to be ahead of the curve with your organization to make sure that it's done correctly. So I think that'll play a big part as well.
No, for sure. And Highgate's a great example, isn't it? Because I think if you thought back 10 years ago, it might have been you thought of a typical reseller, top-down approach, 5 days in the office. Highgate is a very different organisation. Does that give you a different perspective on what makes a good leader in today's market?
Yeah, it's definitely different at Highgate. And in fact, if we look across the industry, I would say it's different. It is the ongoing conversation of hybrid model versus back in the office. It's quite nice actually to be out of that conversation. So at Highgate, since 2010, when Highgate was founded, we have been 100% remote. So we were actually founded to be a 100% remote company. So that is a different leadership style. However, it's consistent. So I think one thing that's quite difficult is probably when you've got a hybrid workforce and making sure everyone is treated fairly, making sure, even if you can't see them, if there's someone doing something good, but they're more predominantly home-based, that you are able to not show preference to people that are in the office and not let that sort of be a bias. Whereas everyone's on an even, playing field at Highgate with regards to the fact that we are remote. I think we make such an effort to keep in touch because we are remote, and it's the only way that we can. So, when we do Teams calls, it's cameras on because we still need to read people's body language. We still need all that sort of thing. And very much to touch on Manny's point about sort of people first and actually that balance in a business, we made a decision that, employee wellbeing would sort of be at the core of everything that Highgate did. And that led us to introduce the 4-day work week, which we are now nearly 3 years into, and it's working. It's going great. And so
Still the only reseller
I believe that
we
only
know
in
of,
the
yeah,
IT
yeah.
channel. However, if anyone wants to prove me wrong, please do message me because I am going to use that for as long as I can. So again, different leadership styles. So we have to know who is in the business pretty much at all times, who is covering what workload, because that's how our 4-day work week works. We remain open 5 days a week, but we have people covering workload. So, I'm very proud to say it is a diverse leadership team, and I believe that builds the culture and then it resonates down through the business, through the employees. And it's great. It means that Highgate is a diverse workplace. And we always say, being 100% remote, we're not going to appeal to everyone. We don't hide the fact that we're 100% remote. However, for people that are looking for that work-life balance, maybe an employer that's going to put well-being at the forefront rather than, we still want growth, of course. We still want to be profitable as a business, but actually there is just that balance. And I do think that now that's what leadership needs to be. And I think there's just other little things that management need to look at, leadership needs to look at. For example, I have worked in places where talking about salaries is so taboo in regards of how do you approach that subject with your manager. And it's so, when you're a junior and you don't know how to conduct those conversations, or a senior, even, at any point in your career. So one thing that we've actually introduced, and it was introduced for even in my contract. So when I was employee number 12 and it was only really sales before me, other than one person in finance, was at everyone's annual review, we will discuss salary. It doesn't necessarily mean an increase, but it will be discussed. So we're taking that, we're taking it away as a taboo subject and opening a conversation, giving people the abilities, because there were some stats around men ask for this increases, whereas women are less likely to. And therefore that could lead to like the gender pay differences and things like that. Now, I'd like to think we'd never get to that point. However, enabling people to have that conversation is just something that we're doing that's slightly different.
Yeah, definitely. No, for sure. And it'd be really good to know about the high points, your proudest moments of your careers so far, Manny.
Probably just work when you start working. You don't really know what you're going to do. You just start, and you just got into sales. Didn't know much about tech, and still here 20 plus years later. I'd say it's when I was at Supermicro, we went for an organisation that nobody really knew the name of. It was a server hardware player that was probably everywhere, but nobody really knew because it was rebadged to something else. And it took a long time to get through to where we needed to be in the UK. And when we did start seeing that happen, and I think it was after 2008, we started to see that momentum build up. We started working with customers that we never thought we were, like banks and online travel organizations. And all of a sudden, you're having a conversation of just selling, say, a case to the whole stack. And for me, that became really interesting because then you're selling racks and racks of servers that I'd never thought was going to be imaginable when I started. And it's the relationships that you build along the way. I think that for me, the highlight is the relationships you build because they stay with you. But you get to have some amazing deals that you've done across that time. And I remember my first deal, that big deal that closed $20+ million. It was the highlight for me. I was screaming and shouting down everyone, making sure they knew that I'd closed that order down. But we also realized that we all celebrate each other's wins, and I think the channel's quite small in many ways, even if you're in vendor space. And it was good. And at that point, I think I was the only female in that business. So for me, it was a big win.
Must have been good commission on that deal.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah. And Jenny?
So last year, we did a employee survey. And so when I started at Highgate nearly 3.5 years ago, as I touched on, I was employee number 12. It had been a sales only function other than one person in finance before I joined. So very much I was the first person in operations tasked with growing out, that team. So I've seen Highgate grow from 12 to 42, I think we're on as of today, employees. And last year when we did the survey, and it's quite nerve-wracking actually putting it out there and getting everyone's take on. A lot of it is management focused as well, and how do they feel, and do you feel does Highgate feel inclusive in various different, and on the inclusivity questions, which was basically, I do not feel judged based on my age, gender, race, background. Everyone 100% agreed. And it just felt like the vision that when I first started at Highgate, that me, Bob and Stu as the senior management team, and then Paolo who joined the senior management team, what we have been working towards and striving and making Highgate a place where everyone can be the best version of themselves. It's a line we use a lot, but it's one we truly believe. It just felt like we'd achieved it with those results.
No, definitely. And as two young female leaders, it'd be good to get your perspective on this. I think even on LinkedIn on a daily basis, I see examples of, sexism and racism just out there on social media in the IT industry, in the IT channel. So the industry is obviously predominantly male, predominantly white still. But do you think things are improving from your perspective?
Yes. I do think it has improved. I think allyship is key here. And also, you mentioned relationships, Manny. The relationships you build, women supporting women seems to be such a big thing in the industry, and it's just brilliant. I think we just give a little fist pump every time we see that woman get promoted, and it's not that we want to take away from what men have achieved as well, but men that can be allies are just brilliant because they can help change. They can call it out. They might have more of a voice than a woman does, but it is still hard. I think, I can recall even in the last couple of years incidents that have happened, but do we look at it as an industry, or do we open that can of worms and it's just an even bigger issue? But, I have some really good relationships with a lot of great men in the channel, of all different ages and things like that. And so we can just hope that with their support, with all the movements that are happening and taking place and awareness that's being raised, it will one day go, but it's not disappeared yet.
Well, what about you, Manny, at Exertis?
I think not just Exhibit, generally seen a huge change generally because one, you're seeing more people from different backgrounds in the industry. You're seeing more females in leadership positions than we saw 10 years ago. And as a result of that, you'll see a positive change with organisations. At Exertis, we've seen allyship. So Jenny touched on allyship. That's something that we've been rolling out for 2 years now. We went through this pilot session with Microsoft and they showed us what they did. And that's one thing I've learned about the channel. Everyone's willing to share when it comes to making your organisations better. And their remit to us was pay it forward. So we rolled out allyship within our organisations, but then we've also gone and trained some partners and vendors on allyship as well so they can roll it out in their organisations. And having allies is imperative, I'd find, because if you want to be a leader in the industry, most of them are male, so it's important to have that mentorship because they're in those positions that can advise you. But it's completely what Jenny said. There is a more confidence in speaking because there's other females that absolutely are cheerleading each other along the way. But I find you get a mix of people cheering you, but definitely it's a big win, I find, and you just find you get stronger as a person as well because you're a community. And it's not just you on your own.
No, definitely. And it'd be great to know what you got planned as Oxygen influencers for the next 12 months.
Next 12 months is continuing what we've been doing. But it's also spending more time working with management because what you find is you have your grassroots, which are your employee resource groups. You have your senior leadership team who are completely bought in and advocating to make those changes. And then you have the mass, I call it, which I've been speaking to internally about, that you need to get them on that journey. If that majority of that workforce is of a certain demographic, then you need to take them onto this inclusive journey with you. And that's something that I've spoken to other organisations about as well. And everyone seems to be struggling with that part. And it's not because businesses don't want, I think it's more not sure how to. And it's about just making sure that we can work on that. So that's going to be a big focus for us there. And for the next 12 months, I'm going to be spending more time with our European offices because we're also on our inclusion journey with them. And I spent a lot of time in the UK. So it's about replicating what we're doing with that with our businesses across Europe as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And you, Jenny?
So I'm very excited about having more of a CSR focus this year. So as any business, will know, there's that balance of business critical when it's screaming at you and you really cannot ignore it, and then the CSR, and it is very important that you must balance both. You cannot neglect one, and quite often when the business critical stuff is screaming at you, it's very easy to overlook the CSR, and then it never gets forgotten about. But we have just announced our charity for this year, and it's a charity called Mikey's Line, which is a suicide prevention charity. And we are going to be doing smaller fundraisers and then lead into a big fundraiser, which I'm about to announce internally, but I'm going to say it here first. But they will know soon. We're going to do a skydive. So we're going to get a couple of people involved. And so I'm looking forward as well to seeing how my team grows. As the first person in operations, I now have a team of 13. I've set out some progression plans for some of my team as well. So, I'm really proud of where I'm at. And I feel I've achieved a lot, and that feels great. I want other people to feel that. So as much as I'm involved in the channel community as well, I feel like I am also a mentor for those in my team that I'm helping progress and things like that. So yeah, an exciting year.
Great. And on the final note, we asked all the influencers to nominate a walk-on song. I don't know if you remember what you put, but just to jog your memories, you've got Vibe, which is a Bhangra song, I believe, and Ready for It by Taylor Swift. Not familiar with that one myself, but...
Are you familiar with Vibe?
I had to look it up. I am now. Yeah, I had to look them both up. But who do you think has got the best walk-on song?
Very, very, very appropriate songs, I feel.
Yeah. Vibe for me, because it's completely who I am as a person. It's one of the happiest songs out there. And Diljit Dosanjh is one of the biggest artists in the world now. And, he was telling my boss a few weeks ago when I was trying to get tickets for it, he sold out the O2 for 4 nights. And that's not a mean feat to sell out the O2. And then he did other venues across UK as well. So he's probably the huge unknown in the IT industry, maybe.
No, for sure. And you're a self-declared Swiftie, is that the...
Self-declared Swiftie,
yeah. So you obviously want to stick up for her all day long.
Yeah, I'm going to stick up. I mean, selling out the O2 4 times is impressive. But I feel like Taylor Swift might have been in there. Was it Wembley 7 times?
They're both great choices. It's a dead heat. So what a great note to end it on. So thank you to the two of you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.